The rain came sideways, that Tuesday evening, the kind that makes the streets of downtown Vancouver look like somebody spilled the sky. Arthur Pemberton was already running late. He had left the courthouse on Hornby Street at 6:15, his briefcase under one arm and his umbrella already broken from the wind, and he was cutting through the alley behind the Granville Strip, because that was 3 minutes faster, and Arthur Pemberton had not wasted 3 minutes in 40 years of practicing law. He heard her before he saw her, a small voice, high and thin, almost swallowed by the rain. Sir, wait! He did not stop. People said things in that alley. He had learned not to engage. Sir, your wallet. He stopped. He turned, and there was a girl, maybe 9 or 10, standing under the narrow overhang of a loading dock. She was holding something out toward him. Her arm was bare. She had no jacket. Her hair was flat against her face from the rain, and she was shivering in a way that looked like it had been going on for a while, the deep muscle kind, not the surface kind. In her hand was his wallet. Arthur reached for his inside breast pocket, empty. He walked back and took it from her. He opened it. Everything was there. The cards, the cash, the photograph of his daughter from the summer they went to Tofino, the one where she was laughing at something off camera, and he could never remember what it was. Where did you find this? He said. The man in the blue jacket, she said. He took it when you were at the light. He dropped it when he started running. Arthur looked toward the mouth of the alley. There was no one there. He looked back at the girl. She had already stepped back under the overhang and pulled her knees to her chest. You chased him? Arthur said. She shrugged. Not proud, just factual. He stood in the rain for a moment. His suit was already soaked through the shoulders. He looked at the wallet in his hand, and then at the girl, and then back at the wallet, and something moved in his chest that he was not prepared for. Where are your parents? He said. She looked at the wall across the alley. Are you here alone? She said nothing. He had a dinner at 7. A client from Calgary who was paying $400 an hour and who did not like to wait. His car was parked 2 blocks over, and he was already wet, and his evening was already complicated enough. He put the wallet in his pocket. Come on, he said. Out of the rain. She did not move. There's a diner on Granville, he said. I'll buy you supper. She looked at him then. Not suspicious exactly. More like she was calculating something. I don't know you, she said. No, he said. You don't. My name is Arthur Pemberton. I'm a lawyer. I've been practicing at the same firm on Hornby Street for 31 years. He paused. You just gave me back my wallet. I think that earns you a bowl of soup. She thought about this. What kind of soup, she said. Whatever kind they have, he said. She stood up. Her name was Cassie. She told him this at the diner counter while warming her hands around a mug of hot chocolate that the waitress had brought without being asked, because the waitress had taken one look at the girl, and then at Arthur and made a decision. Arthur ordered coffee. He was not hungry. He watched Cassie work through a bowl of tomato soup, and then most of a grilled cheese sandwich, methodical and quiet, and he noticed that she saved the last quarter of the sandwich by wrapping it carefully in a napkin and setting it beside her, for later. In case there was no later. He had seen that once before. His mother, after his father left, the way she started portioning things out, making them last, calculating the distance between what there was and what was needed. How long have you been on your own? He said. She looked up. She had brown eyes, very steady. I'm not on my own, she said. I have a spot, under the Cambie Bridge. But it's been raining for 4 days so. She said it the way you say so when the rest of the sentence is obvious. Arthur wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. Outside the diner window, Granville Street moved past in streaks of headlight and umbrella. A couple ran for cover laughing. A bus went by and threw a wave of water across the sidewalk. How old are you? He said. 11, she said. He had a daughter, Rebecca. 34 years old, living in Toronto, calling him on Sunday evenings and telling him he worked too much. He had not told Rebecca that the apartment on West 12th felt very large since her mother moved to Victoria. He had not told anyone that. Is there anyone I should call? He said. Someone who's looking for you? Cassie tore a small piece of crust from the sandwich she was not saving and ate it. I had a foster family in Burnaby, she said. But they moved and I wasn't in the file right, so I got lost in the system. She says this without bitterness. She was describing weather. That was 8 months ago. 8 months. Arthur set down his coffee cup. He thought about what 8 months under a bridge looked like from the inside. He thought about the 4 days of rain. He thought about her arm, bare in the alley, holding out his wallet to a stranger who was not going to stop. I need to make a phone call, he said. Can you wait here? She looked at the door, calculating again. I'm not calling the police, he said. I'm calling to cancel a dinner. She watched him get up and step outside, and he stood on the wet sidewalk in the rain with his phone and called the client from Calgary and said there was a family emergency, which was not exactly a lie, and then he went back inside and sat down. Eat the rest of your soup, he said. It's getting cold. He could not leave her there. That was the truth of it, simple and unavoidable. He was 62 years old and had spent his career building careful arguments on firm foundations, and he knew when something was simply true and when he was talking himself out of what was simply true. He called a contact at the Ministry of Children and Family Development. He knew her from a case 3 years ago, and when he explained the situation, she went quiet for a moment and then said, "Arthur, you know I can't place a child with you tonight. It's a process." "I know it's a process," he said. "I'm not asking you to place her. I'm asking if she can stay somewhere safe and warm while the process happens." Another silence. "Where are you thinking?" she said. "My apartment," he said. "I have a guest room." She would have her own space, Arthur. "I'm a member of the bar in good standing," he said. "I have no record. I am offering a child shelter from the rain. I'll need to send someone tomorrow morning. I'll have coffee ready," he said. He hung up. He went back to the diner. Cassie had finished the soup and was drawing something on a napkin with a pen she had found somewhere, a small, precise drawing of the diner window with the rain on it. He looked at it for a moment. "You're good at that," he said. She did not look up. "I know," she said. His apartment was on the 14th floor and faced the water, and on clear evenings you could see the North Shore Mountains going pink above the inlet. Cassie stood at the window for a long time, without saying anything, the city spread out below her, and Arthur stood in the kitchen, making tea he did not want and giving her time. She had almost nothing. A backpack that held a change of clothes, a sketchbook with a broken spine, 3 colored pencils wrapped in an elastic band, a bus pass that had expired in February, and a photograph in a plastic sleeve of a woman laughing in front of what looked like a lake somewhere in the interior. She set the backpack on the floor beside the sofa and sat down next to it rather than on it. "The guest room is through there," Arthur said. "There's a bathroom attached. Clean towels in the cabinet." She looked at the door he was pointing at. "Why are you doing this?" she said. It was a fair question. He thought about it seriously, the way he thought about questions in court, not reaching for the first available answer. "Because you didn't have to run after that man," he said. "You could have kept the wallet. Taken the cash. No one would have known." He paused. "You ran after him in the rain without a jacket, and you handed it back to someone who wasn't even going to stop for you." Cassie looked at her hands. "My mom used to say you don't do things for what you get back," she said. "You do them because that's the kind of person you're trying to be." The photograph was her mother. He understood that now. He did not ask what had happened. That was a story for another time, if she chose to tell it, and it was not his to reach for. "She sounds like she was very smart," he said. Cassie picked up the backpack and held it in her lap. "She was," she said. "She was the smartest person I ever knew." Arthur nodded. He looked at his hands, too, for a moment. "Get some sleep," he said. "There's someone coming in the morning to help us figure out next steps. She's kind. Her name is Sandra, and she has a very loud laugh, and she will probably bring donuts because that's what she does." Something shifted in Cassie's face. Not quite a smile, something just underneath one. "What kind?" she said. "I'll request the maple ones," he said. She carried the backpack into the guest room and closed the door. Not all the way, just most of the way, leaving a thin line of light from the hallway. Arthur sat down in his armchair by the window. The city hummed below. A freighter moved slowly across the inlet, its running lights orange against the dark water. He thought about the alley and the rain and the steady brown eyes of a girl who had returned something she could have kept and who saved the last quarter of her sandwich because she had learned not to assume tomorrow. He thought about his own daughter at 11. Ballet lessons on Saturday mornings. The house in Kerrisdale with the oak tree in the back. How easy it had been to assume tomorrow. He did not sleep for a long time, but it was not the anxious kind of wakefulness. It was the kind that comes when something has shifted, and you are sitting quietly with the shift, not yet sure what it means, only sure that it is real. Sandra arrived at 8:30 with maple donuts and a messenger bag full of forms and the loud laugh Arthur had promised. And Cassie sat at the kitchen table in Arthur's oversized cardigan that she had pulled from the hook by the guest room door, and she looked at Sandra for a long moment, and then looked at Arthur, and then ate a donut. Sandra did her job. She was good at her job. She asked careful questions and wrote things down and did not make Cassie feel like a case file, which was harder than it sounded. At one point, she asked Cassie to describe one thing she liked to do, just one, and Cassie said drawing, and Sandra said what kind, and Cassie said buildings mostly, and old things, things that looked like they had stories, and Sandra wrote that down too, and Arthur saw her underline it. The process took 3 weeks. Arthur knew it would. He had called enough family law colleagues to understand what the process looked like from the outside, and he found that the outside view was considerably less informative than the inside view, which is to say, slower, more uncertain, and more dependent on which caseworker picked up the phone on which morning. During those 3 weeks, Cassie stayed in the guest room that Arthur had stopped calling the guest room and started calling, in his own head, her room. She went to the school 4 blocks over, temporarily enrolled while the paperwork moved. She came home in the afternoons and sat at the kitchen table and drew in the sketchbook with the broken spine. And sometimes she showed Arthur what she was working on, and sometimes she didn't, and he understood that both were fine. He started leaving earlier so he could be back by 5. He told Rebecca about Cassie on a Sunday call in October, 3 weeks in, and Rebecca was quiet for a long time, and then said, "Dad," and then was quiet again, and then said, "Are you sure about this?" And Arthur said he wasn't sure about very much, but he was sure about this. And Rebecca said, "Okay," and then, "Is she okay?" And Arthur said yes, increasingly, and Rebecca said, "Good. Tell her I said hi," and Arthur said he would. He told Cassie that Rebecca said hi. Cassie looked up from the sketchbook. "Who's Rebecca?" she said. "My daughter," he said. "She lives in Toronto. She's 34. Cassie considered this. "Do you talk to her a lot?" she said. "Sundays," he said. "Every week." Cassie looked back at the sketchbook. Then she said, "That's good, that you do that." She said it quietly, like something she had thought about before. The formal approval came on a Thursday in November, just after the first snow of the season, the early kind that doesn't stick but makes the city look briefly, like something has been reconsidered. Arthur got the call at his office and sat for a moment in his chair, looking out at Burrard Inlet through the rain-streaked window, and then he picked up his phone and texted Cassie. She had a phone now, a second-hand one Sandra had connected her with. And the text said only, "It's done. Official." Her reply came back in 40 seconds. "Okay." And then, 3 seconds later, "Can we have the salmon? Thing for dinner." Arthur had made salmon with lemon and dill the week before after watching a video on his laptop at midnight because he had not cooked a real meal since the separation and he needed something to do with his hands. It had turned out reasonably well. Cassie had eaten 2 portions and said it was okay, which Arthur had learned was her version of high praise. "Yes," he typed back. "I'll stop on the way home." He closed the file on his desk. The case was a contract dispute between 2 construction firms in Burnaby, 300 pages of documentation, and he had been living inside it for 6 weeks. He closed the file and put it in the drawer, and stood up and looked out at the city and the inlet and the mountains behind it, and he thought, sometimes the thing that changes your life doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with wait or warning. It is a voice in the rain. A small hand holding out something that was yours, returned without condition, and you almost walked past it. He had almost walked past it. He did not let himself forget that. Rebecca came for Christmas. She arrived at YVR on the 23rd, pulled a rolling suitcase into the apartment, and stood in the hallway taking in the sketchbook pages that had been tacked carefully to the wall beside the guest room. Cassie's room in a rough grid. Drawings of the Granville Bridge and the old CPR station and the lions on the stone gate at the park entrance, and one of Arthur himself asleep in his armchair by the window with the city behind him, his glasses still on. Rebecca stood looking at that one for a long time. "She drew that?" Rebecca said. "She draws everything," Arthur said. "She wakes up early and sits at the window." Rebecca turned and looked at her father. He was in the kitchen and he had already started on breakfast, which she could not remember him ever doing in the house, in Kerrisdale. Not once. "You look different," she said. "I'm not different," he said. "You look less." She searched for the word. "Sealed," she said. He did not answer that. He handed her a coffee and told her Cassie would be up by 7, because she was always up by 7, and he asked if she wanted eggs. Cassie met Rebecca at the kitchen table, with the same measured assessment she had given Arthur in the alley, the same quiet calculation, and Rebecca, who had her mother's frankness and her father's precision, looked right back and said, "I've seen your drawings. The one of my dad asleep is the most accurate thing anyone has ever captured about him." Cassie looked at Arthur. Arthur looked at his eggs. Cassie said, "I have one of the mountains too if you want to see it." "Yes," Rebecca said. "Absolutely. That was the beginning of that." In January, Cassie started a Saturday program at the Vancouver Art Gallery, a class for young people with demonstrated ability, and Arthur drove her there on the first morning through fresh snow and waited in the lobby for the first 20 minutes, because she had not told him not to. And when she came out of the classroom door at the end of the session, she was talking to another girl and did not notice him for a full minute. And when she did notice him, she did not say anything. But she rolled her eyes the way children roll their eyes at the adults who love them. The way that means you didn't have to do that, and also means I'm glad you're here. He drove her home. She sat in the passenger seat with the seatbelt over her shoulder and told him about the class in fragments the way she told him most things. Not in one direction, but in pieces, circling, and he listened without looking for the thread. because he had learned that the pieces were the thing. She told him the instructor had asked them to draw something they had lost. He kept his eyes on the road. "What did you draw?" he said. "I didn't," she said. "I drew the lake where the photo is. From my mum's picture." She paused. "She used to say you carry the people you love inside you so you don't really lose them. You just have to know where to look." The light ahead turned red. Arthur stopped the car. Outside, Vancouver was white and quiet under the January sky, the kind of quiet that only comes when snow is still falling and the city has not yet remembered to be busy. He thought about the alley, the rain, the wallet in a small bare hand. He thought about his mother portioning out the last of the bread. He thought about the way Cassie saved the last quarter of a sandwich for a tomorrow she wasn't sure would come, and the way she had stopped doing that. Slowly, over the weeks, until one evening she had left half a piece of toast on her plate without wrapping it. Just left it there the way a person leaves things when they trust that there will be more. The light turned green. He drove. "She was right," he said, "about knowing where to look." Cassie looked out the window at the snow. "Yeah," she said, "I think so too.